All right, folks, welcome back to an edition of Landmine Live here Friday. Happy Friday. A lot to talk about. There's a really loose update about some charging documents filed for a former elected official from the Anchorage School Board, former president, as well as a legislative update on what's going on in Juneau and really what's not going on in Juneau on this Friday. First of all, I want to give a big shout out to our main sponsor, GCI, for making these videos like this possible. In fact, before we started the stream, Scott over here, we did a speed test just to check how the internet's going, and I've never seen it it pegs over so hard, it doesn't even have enough to show gigabyte, 1,000 megabytes by 50. We have the red package, the stream gigabyte package. So I want to thank our main sponsor, GCI, for making videos like this possible. Also, I want to thank Scott Jensen from Jensen Hall, my business partner here in this studio we have in Anchorage. It's great. We've been doing more interviews, and we're going to be doing more live streams and updates, and it's just great to have somebody here to help me do these videos and show kind of what's happening on the screen and give a bigger picture of what's happening. So first thing I want to talk about is Elisa Vacalis, formerly Elisa Snelling, from the Anchorage School Board. She was on the school board from 2015 to this year. She lost to a guy, Carl Jacobs, in April. She has been charged with 6 felony counts of theft and for embezzlement for her time working for the Matanuska Brewing Company and Anchorage Ale House, owned by Matt Tomter, as a bookkeeper. And there's an article on the Alaska Landmine website, the first article up, and it talks about what happened. But these charging documents, like I said, six counts of fraud and theft and falsifying business records. But the charging document itself is pretty wild, and I want to just kind of go through it and explain what they're alleging happened. And this is after an investigation. Matt Tomter on May 27th, 2020, filed a police report with the Anchorage Police Department alleging all of this theft and fraud after he discovered that there was something wrong. And then it says he hired a forensic accountant to do a forensic accounting of what happened. And some of it is just really kind of wild. So according to the charging documents, after Vacalis was terminated, Tomter hired an accountant to do a forensic accounting of the books. And it goes on from here. And it says this forensic accountant found 3 things. The first one is payroll. Vacalis was hired as a 1099 independent contractor at $385 a week per restaurant. So $1,155 a week per restaurant, not total, not a bad deal. But apparently at some point it says she also made herself a W-2 employee and paid herself as a contractor and a W-2 employee, and it was only supposed to be a contractor. He realized this, and I guess the forensic accounting showed that she paid herself bonuses on several occasions and even gave herself a pay raise. Wow. Alleged stolen category for this one was almost $10,000, $9,300. Then it says there's a petty cash incident where she made checks payable to petty cash, even though the restaurants don't use petty cash per se. And it says there were several petty cash checks written with no receipts. The backs of them appeared to be signed by Leanne Parsons, the general manager of the Midtown restaurant Anchorage Ale House. However, according to Leanne Parsons, the signatures were not her signatures, but forgeries. Between the 3 restaurants, the alleged amount stolen categorized almost $6,000. Then you have a vendor issue where it says she wrote 2 checks to herself for $2,000 and for $2,500. And then after she did that, she went into the QuickBooks and changed the record to reflect a vendor's name. That's like classic. Scott, is that like classic, like fraud? Classic? And you give yourself a check and then you go and change the name of the check in the QuickBooks. So as long as no one ever looks at the check, they won't know. And then here's maybe my favorite part. And again, this is horrible for Matt Tomter. I mean, it sounds like it's over $25,000. But it said Steen, the auditor, identified 2 various credit card charges on a business credit card issued to Vacalis for her bookkeeping duties. There were 2 large charges, one a $3,000 charge to a local law firm, a payment made for her divorce proceedings. Second, on September 16, 2019, a charge of $2,800 to L&M Motors for repairs on a 2013 GMC Yukon owned by Elisa Vacalis. There were numerous smaller charges on the card issued to Vacalis, total amount unauthorized charges over $7,000. Wow. Now, keep in mind, this all happened allegedly, per the charging documents, while she was on the school board. She was only defeated in April by Carl Jacobs, and she was school board president. in a pretty close race. And she had served on there previously for 2 terms, so 6 years. Again, you can go to thealaskalandmine.com, check out the story, look at the charging documents from the state of Alaska. The investigation has been going on by APD for over a year. It says Tomter went to the APD and filed a report on May 27th, 2020. Really, really wild. This is the thing. I talk to friends who have business, and I have a business now, two businesses I'm running, and I talk to people with larger businesses, and you hire people to do books or accounting, and there's a huge amount of trust, because if you give somebody access to your QuickBooks or your books, or have the ability to write checks or make expenditures, this kind of thing happens. I mean, this is actually very common. I know a lot of people in business who have had money stolen, sometimes smaller amounts, even amounts sometimes like this, much larger. We've seen stories in the past too in Anchorage where this has happened, but this is a part of doing business. It's a risk that the larger you get, the more people you bring on to do this work. And again, this is all charges, and I reached out to her and Matt Tomter, and neither one of them wanted to comment, but this is all charges. Everybody's innocent until proven guilty, but I mean, it sounds like according to these documents, they wouldn't be making the charges unless they had some serious evidence. But oh my God, I mean, she was the president of the school board during all of this. So totally wild. It's a Friday afternoon story, which kind of just surprises a lot of people. So again, if you want to read more about this, go to alaskalandmine.com. There's the first story, and you can click on the story, and the charging documents are included. The penalties for these charges are not light. The first one, scheme to defraud, they're all Class B and C felonies, punishable by up to 10 years imprisonment and a fine of up to $100,000. The second one, theft in the first degree, punishable by up to 10 years imprisonment, a fine of $100,000 up to $100,000. There's 2 charges for falsifying business records, punishable by up to 5 years imprisonment and a fine of up to $50,000. There's 2 charges of fraudulent use of an access device or identification document, punishable by up to 1 year in prison and a fine of up to $10,000. So my guess is the way this works oftentimes is you have a lot of charges and you do the full gambit, and then if they're willing to plead, you get rid of maybe half of them or all of them but 1 or 2, and you plead it out to something to avoid the going to trial. But anyways, wild story. To be honest, I heard about this a while ago, last year. I looked into it. I really couldn't get much from the APD to confirm if there was an investigation, and I think it's always better to wait and see if their charges are filed, because a lot of people get investigated and they prove that nothing happened. There's no proof or evidence they did anything wrong. So this is this I guess you could say luckily came out now, but she lost the election in April, so it wouldn't really matter. She lost her 3rd term. So that's pretty, I would say, very loose. I would categorize that as a very loose situation with the former Anchorage School Board president doing this stuff to allegedly to Matt Tomter at Matanuska Brewing and Anchorage Ale House. So that's that. Other thing I want to talk about is special session. I'm here in Anchorage. I didn't go to Juneau because it would have been a colossal waste of time this week. There's some evidence that things might increase, or there might be something productive done next week. But the big news is Governor Dunleavy finally introduced an appropriations bill which allows the legislature to debate and try to fund some kind of dividend and do the reverse sweep. Now, because he called this special session, and before all that was on there was the permanent fund constitutional amendment, where he wants to put the permanent fund in the Constitution and the power cost equalization and do some kind of 50-50 split. That was on the call for the special session. There was some revenue measures, but there was not an appropriations bill to fund a dividend, which is currently at 0. Legislature was trying to do 1,100 because of a vote fail on a procedural vote and this savings account of the Constitutional Budget Reserve. Because that failed, the dividend ended up being 525. Dunleavy said that was a joke, vetoed it, so now it's at 0. Some people in the legislature, some Republicans especially that aren't really aligned with Dunleavy, have said, screw it, they own it, no dividend, and we'll see where it goes, and no reverse sweep. Other people want a dividend, they want the reverse sweep, things like WWAMI, the programs like WWAMI to be funded. The big news last week was the power cost equalization lawsuit. The judge ruled that can't be swept, so that took some pressure off the legislature to deal with the reverse sweep, because the PCE was probably maybe one of the biggest items on there that could be swept away and not funded if the reverse sweep fails. So they added the appropriation bill, Dunleavy did, so that could be a development next week. a lot of legislators went there Monday. Many of them left. There's a whole bunch of them down there in Kenai right now at the Kenai River Classic. Sarah Rasmussen was down there posting pictures. I heard Senator Machicki was down there. I think Senator Rivak was down there. Governor Dunleavy was down there. Commissioners, there was more legislators. So there was a bunch of legislators in Kenai, not Juneau. Many left on Monday from Juneau anyways. There was a session today, a floor session in the House. I didn't watch the whole thing. I didn't realize how many people were absent. Most of the senators seem to be gone. So it's a 30-day special session. We'll see if next week proves to be fruitful for any conversations involving the dividend, the reverse sweep, and maybe these bigger questions of the permanent fund constitutional amendment, which, again, we had Bill Wilkowski and Shelley Hughes here last week doing a live stream, and even though this working group came together and had a report and they have some suggestions and ideas, there really doesn't seem like there's a will or any kind of agreement for 14 votes in the House, Senate, 27 votes in the House for a constitutional amendment. I mean, they can barely get to 11 on some of these big issues. So I guess next week's going to be interesting to see what happens in Juneau. If anything happens, it was pretty clearly going to end unless this appropriations bill was introduced. So it was kind of a stare-off match, game of chicken, and I guess you could say Dunleavy blinked and added the appropriations bill, because if he wouldn't have done that, I think they would have left and just gavelled out and ended the session. So that's kind of that. You know, the weekend's coming up, and there's going to be nothing really happening in Juneau until next Monday, this Monday coming, and we'll see what happens with any kind of agreement or consensus on moving forward. My guess is if they don't have a clear path or agreement on something by the end of next week, it'll probably just end. If there is something there on the dividend, the reverse sweep, or like I said, the bigger questions of the amendment, the constitutional amendment, they might stay longer and try to get it done. But I think most people who watch this closely are not very optimistic for any kind of large change to happen. I think probably some kind of dividend and the reverse sweep is going to be the result. The other news is we had Governor Walker and Heidi Drygas in here last couple days ago. We interviewed them for their campaign debut. Governor Walker's back in the race as an independent with Heidi Drygas. Today, Les Guerra filed, former Democratic legislator in the House. He has not announced a running mate yet, but within a week, we had Dunleavy file, we had Walker file, and now we have Les Guerra filing. And we also have Libertarian Billy Toyen, who, if you go back on YouTube, Landmine YouTube or Facebook, we actually interviewed him in 2018 on a party bus from Anchorage to Girdwood. Great interview, very libertarian style. So he's a bit of a character. So now you have four. There's talk of Al Gross. There's been talk of others, but it's really a year away from the primary. And we don't know anything really until we figure out the top four, which just to be clear, in the primary, the open primary that passed as a result of ballot measure 1, you don't rank anybody there. You vote for one. You vote for one person in the open primary. So if there's 12 people in the primary, you vote for one, okay? Then the top four vote getters from the primary go to the general, which is then ranked choice. So until we have an idea after next August 16th, who's going to be in the top four in the governor's race, the Senate race, House races, Senate races, it's really hard to gauge how it's going to go, because if there's 2 Republicans, 2 Democrats, if there's 3 Republicans or 1 Democrat, 2 Republicans, an independent, a Democrat, there's no telling. So it's going to be a big factor in this governor's race, the Senate race, and many legislative races. So it's a year away from the primary. Things are heating up. We have 4 people right now in the governor's race. Within a week, 3 filed, including Dunleavy, Walker, and Les Guerra. The legislature's in session right now, in special session. Nothing happened this week of consequence except the appropriations bill the governor introduced. So we'll see what happens next week regarding the dividend and the reverse sweep. Elisa Snelling was charged, Michaelis now was charged with 6 counts of felony fraud and theft for allegedly, as a bookkeeper, taking all kinds of money from Matt Tomter and paying for a divorce lawyer and her car and who knows what else. So pretty loose overall. Scott, I mean, Scott, when you heard about that, what did you think? I mean,
loose.
Scott just says loose. I mean, I published the article and I said, Scott, click on that. And he was just like, wow, didn't even know about it. So again, I want to thank GCI, our sponsor main sponsor for making videos like this possible in the studio. We're going to be doing a lot more of these. You've seen some interviews in the last week. I want to thank Scott Jensen from Jensen Hall, my partner in the studio. It's just really great to be here and have that ability to do these videos, these great quality videos, and also have information on screen and do it a little more. It's a little more professional than me and Juneau in the public lounge with my phone and not being able to share the video, and in the past, just me using my phone or my webcam. So I'm very happy to be doing this. I want to thank GCI for making this possible, Scott Jensen, and then all of our followers, subscribers. We really appreciate it. We've been working this week on the homelessness video, the sequel to This is Anchorage, and that's going to be out hopefully by September 1st. We have a ton of interviews and footage of all kinds of the Sullivan Arena, the homeless camps, talking to folks. So that's a project we're working on. So AlaskaLandmine.com, there's always stories up there. Follow us on Facebook, Alaska Landmine. We have Alaska Landmine Twitter. We have the Instagram. And we run this thing, with ad revenue and donations from our subscribers. So we appreciate it. If you want to donate, you can go to AlaskaLandmine.com/donate. All the money just goes into kind of keeping this thing going. There's a team of us and keeping the videos like this possible and articles and content. So again, thanks to GCI for making these videos possible. Scott Jensen, all of you guys for reading and following, and stay tuned for more updates from the Alaska Landmine.